You need to pay attention to this, especially if you are an older adult who is receiving Social Security disability benefits. There is some really concerning news coming out that may potentially impact those benefits, and we're going to go over all of that news with you today. So, a lot of this comes from a breaking Washington Post report where they did an investigation and uncovered that there is a rule in the works that could potentially strip disability benefits from hundreds of thousands of older Americans. Officials are reportedly considering removing age as a factor in determining who qualifies for Social Security disability. And this is a huge deal because it could potentially remove benefits from hundreds of thousands of people. And I can't overstate just how drastically terrible those kinds of consequences could be. So, right now, when you apply for disability, the Social Security Administration looks at a lot of different factors, including your age, your health, your education, your work history, and so on. For people over 50, age is an important lifeline in that determination because the rules reflect the fact that it's simply harder for older adults to retrain, learn new skills, and land a new job. We know that employers are just less likely to hire people who are nearing retirement. It's just a fact of life. Now, this is why older applicants tend to have a better chance of qualifying for disability. In fact, there is data from 2022 that shows that these age related rules helped about 42% of applicants be deemed eligible for benefits. That is how important this rule is in the lives of people who apply for these benefits. Officials, according to Washington Post, are considering eliminating age as a factor either entirely or raising that threshold to age 60. They got this information from three different people who were familiar with the plans and spoke on conditions of anonymity in order to share that information. They also, according to this report, plan to modernize labor market data to judge whether or not people can actually work. That would involve replacing that massively outdated jobs list, which includes all sorts of obsolete occupations like nut sorters, and updating that to reflect more current employment trends and things of that nature. Now, there's a lot of reasons why they want to make these changes. There is some logic behind this plan. Supporters are claiming that people are living longer and more jobs are desk-based now, and maybe that work is possible. They argue that many older workers could adapt to modern work instead of simply going to disability benefits. Now, of course, critics are saying that that logic ignores the reality of age discrimination, chronic illness, and declining job prospects for anyone over the age of 50 or 55. In fact, I thought it was interesting because one advocate put it, you can't adapt your way out of arthritis or a heart condition. And that is definitely true. So it's important to remember as we're considering these changes just what an impact these rules could have. So, Washington Post is reporting that Social Security officials actually prepared to issue similar rules at the end of the first Trump administration, but ran out of time before they can enact them. They're saying that removing age from the equation could basically mean treating a 58-year-old construction worker the same as a 25-year-old tech intern on paper, which obviously just doesn't make any sense. The Post reports that this rule, like I said, could result in hundreds of thousands of people losing their benefits. And I know that sounds like hype, so I always like to look at the numbers in greater detail. Policy experts estimate that if the changes cut eligibility by just 10%, that could potentially mean 750,000 fewer people receiving disability support over the next decade. That's three quarters of a million people. In addition to that, you would have 80,000 fewer widows and children who could qualify because the disabled family member that those benefits would be dependent on may no longer qualify. The total estimated loss to benefits is somewhere around $82 billion dollars over the next 10 years. And of course, the administration and its supporters see that $82 billion dollars as a potential cost savings for the government. So it depends on your perspective there, to be fair. Either way, this is going to be catastrophic for a lot of real people. For example, most older adults who are denied disability never find another job. Instead, a lot of them are forced to take early retirement, which means losing roughly 30% of their benefits for life. We've covered that compromise extensively in other videos recently because so many people turn to that early retirement and then pay the consequences of that choice with every Social Security deposit for the rest of their lives. So that's one of the reasons why on this channel, we always recommend you apply for disability first, because then you don't take that loss. Now, for someone who's living on $1,200 a month, a permanent pay cut is a huge and catastrophic consequence. It's not just a little policy tweak. We're talking about the money that people use to pay their bills, afford their housing, purchase their medications, and more. There are some very real world consequences to these kinds of changes. Now, this, of course, is in addition to other cuts that have already been put into motion. For example, the administration has already announced plans to reverse a rule that expanded supplemental security income for about 400,000 people. This particular change only applies to SSI, and it only applies to people on SSI who are living with family members or not paying what the Social Security Administration would consider their fair share of housing expenses. But as a result of that change, about 400,000 people are on track to lose around $300 a month. And we have another video on this that goes into that in greater detail. But it just illustrates how one small procedural tweak can trigger a spiral of consequences for low income people who rely on these benefits. Now, we know that the Washington Post report was based on the anonymous reports of three different people who were familiar with the plans. Nothing official had been released yet, but after that Washington Post report, we received a lot of feedback from different sources clarifying what was going on. So within the Washington Post report, which was published yesterday on October 5th, they quoted Social Security Administration spokesman Barton Mackey as saying that they were working on plans to propose improvements to the disability adjudication process and that it wouldn't be released until it was fully developed. Well, obviously, a lot of people were concerned about this change. There was a lot of outreach to the government. And then today, October 6th, Newsweek reported that the White House has denied that there will be any changes to Social Security determination processes for certain Social Security welfare benefits. Deputy Press Secretary Kush Desai told Newsweek that President Trump will always protect and defend Social Security for American citizens. Now, this is interesting to me, the wording here, because clearly this is designed to help us all sit back, relax, and assume that this Washington Post report isn't really based on fact and maybe isn't going to create any changes. But there's some wording in this Newsweek response that obviously has me concerned here. First of all, they said certain Social Security benefits, and they also tied the word welfare in there. And I know there's a lot of strong feelings about referring to Social Security as welfare since it is an earned benefit. Now, this to me doesn't answer the question, at least not in a meaningful way. We do know that they are and have already announced their intentions to make changes to SSI. So there are changes happening, and it's never been clear if the Washington Post reports changes were going to affect SSDI or SSI or both or whatever. I am cautiously optimistic that as a result of the backlash that was received, these changes may not be enacted, but I'm not fully confident that they won't be. And again, that is my interpretation as a person who's been researching this stuff for a long time. I don't work for the Social Security Administration, I don't work for the government. I am a researcher who's dedicated to helping you make the most of your benefits. Now, with all of that in mind, I want to recap what is definitely true and what is uncertain right now and what is next. So, as of right now, when I am creating this video for you, there is no official rule change that has been released or put on the books yet. The Social Security Administration told the Washington Post that they are working on proposing a rule. And now we have seen that other leaders have denied that claim, but it's very murky and uncertain. We do know that any rule would still need to go through a public comment period, so we will be watching closely to see if anything is posted about this change. But we also know that in a government shutdown like we're in right now, government websites may not be updated, which could make it hard to track these changes as they move forward. We will continue tracking them to the best of our ability for you because I think it's really important that we all know what's going on with these systems and these benefits. That transparency and accountability is priceless. And we'll continue doing our part in bringing you that information as quickly as we can find it. In the meantime, you can do the same things that we're doing. We're going to be following federalregister.gov. We're going to be checking the Social Security website for new releases. And we're going to be speaking up and raising awareness of these potential changes. If you rely on Social Security Disability or SSI, you can reach out to your elected representatives and let them know how important these programs are to you and see if you can get them to advocate on your behalf and help protect this program from any changes. But the big thing for right now is to make sure that you're following updates from trusted sources because there's a lot of misinformation out there. I encounter it every single day, and it's hard to vet and work through, but we have a lot of experience in that regard. So we're doing what we can to create a trustworthy source of news for you here on this channel because I know it's so hard to figure out who you can trust these days. And we take your trust very seriously. So make sure you're subscribed, make sure you're following for updates, and please don't forget to reach out to our sponsor, Chapter Medicare. You're probably well aware that we are cruising headfirst into open enrollment season, and every year you get bombarded by ads from different companies that want you to consider changing your plan. What you may not know is that there are over 20,000 Medicare plans out there, which is an insane amount, and it's more than any reasonable person can figure out on their own, which is why I really appreciate working with Chapter because they have these amazing databases. They'll look at what doctors you need to see, what prescriptions you need, what benefits are important to you, and they'll help you make sure that you are getting the very best coverage for your unique needs because there is no one size fits all plan that's always better for everybody. That's why services like this are so important. It is no cost to you. It takes about 20 minutes, and they said they're saving seniors on average around $1,000, which is huge. So please take some time to give these guys a call. If you call them now, they can help you schedule an appointment during that open enrollment window so that you don't miss the chance to get the absolute best benefits for your needs. And don't forget, we will be back tomorrow with more ways that you can save money and get free stuff. And hopefully, we'll have some better news for you by then as well. Have a great day. I'll see you again soon.